So if we're reviewing where we're at now, basically I went through and painted those seams together. And if we're looking at the pre-multiply after, ignore all the weird colored edges, as we're going to tackle that later with despilling and edge extending. But this is where we're at. So our alpha is starting to get there. We still have this whole area sort of missing over here on the right side. So we're going to tackle the area next, similar to how we tackled the head as it was crossing the seam of that background there. So we're going to tackle that, and also we will try to get his head keyed there as well. There's a little bit missing still at the very end of the shot. After that, we'll probably start to get a core mat in there as well. So right now we don't have any core mat. So if I gamma down, we can see there's a lot of holes in our key. So yeah, so that's how we're gonna do it. Yeah, so let's get started. We'll focus on this right side here, and I'll probably do a time lapse again, but I'm gonna explain just a little bit what I'm doing first. So one thing to think about is we need to key this shirt behind there, but we don't want to make it too solid with this semi-transparent thing that's flying over. So basically what I'm going to do is, instead of trying to have this as part of it, what I'm going to do is after the garbage mat, so after we cut this out, is where I'm going to do the key. So that's before we add back over the top this sort of motion blurred band. So we're going to do it in between the garbage mat and the holdouts. So I'm going to expand the script and pull it down a little bit. And the reason I don't want to do it after the holdout is we don't want to mix and replace over this motion blurred object, because there's no way we're going to be able to key that nicely. So the rotor is going to be better, and that's why we don't want to key mix over the top of this thing. So let's just go here and create a new branch. So same way we did before, put a dot node and just pull it down. All right, so we'll try to start with a Luma keyer, because I think we can probably get something. So look at the alpha channel and let's just start to play around with it and invert this so we can see what we're doing. And I do want to retain some of that like fur detail on there, so we can make it a little bit softer. We might even do like a slight gray key there, and then we can just like paint out the dirt on a couple frames if that's the problem. So if I just hit play and take a look at that, that looks like it's doing a pretty decent job for getting that area. The problem we have is where it crosses the seam into the area behind. So what we could try to do is make a separate key that will blend between the two areas. So if I can just crunch it a little bit further and then make it a little bit harsher, and then we can use that to sort of get across that edge. So we'll use that one for the seam, and we'll use this one for this this area. And we might actually need a third one for this specific area behind. So I'm going to do a third one. And usually I position my actual nodes in the way that the frame is. So for example, this is we're using this keyer for the right side. So this keyer for the right side, this keyer for the center, and this keyer for the left side once it goes over the green screen. So it's just a good way to organize your nodes. Is you always remember that this is like the right side, middle, left side, and always kind of position them relative to your frame. And you can also obviously backdrop them and give them names. So we can just say right side shirt key, and I'll copy that and just to make it very clear for people. center seam key. And then we'll just say left side strip key. So I chose a key light for the one that's over green screen because usually a key light's going to do a good job. So if I disable it, Control Shift drag, and then key it, we get a pretty good result over that area. We could probably do like an IBK there as well if we're not happy with that level of softness. But we'll leave that for now. Potentially you could also just use a Luma keyer and just, you know, if you gamma down, you might get even a different, if we compared that key versus the key light, actually it almost looks like this one's doing a better job on the edge. I'm not paying attention to the center, I'm really paying attention to the edge. And you know, you can see it, this one's just a little bit sharper and this one kind of looks maybe a little bit nicer. So I'm gonna not use a key light there. I'm gonna use something like that. I'm gonna delete this because that's not for this side. So I'll see if I can use some luminance keyers on that side just by adjusting the black point, white point, and the gamma. And we can fill in the holes a little bit by just pushing the white point a little bit. And that seems to be doing a pretty good job. So let's blend these together. Same process we basically have done up to this point. So right side, if we get a little dirt, it's okay. We can always manually remove some things. So we have the right side and the center. So center is going to be the A input. And then for the mask, I'll put a roto and reformat the roto. And then I'll just rotoscope across the center. So that's where we get that key. So let me do that. So we get something like that. And if I blur that, I'm going to blur it to help blend these. We don't want to use a lot of that key because it's not going to be as good because it's a little bit sharp. But it's really the only way we're going to be able to key it. And what we can do with that center roto, center seam key, is just put a little bit of a blur on it so we can soften it a little bit. And lastly, we'll take key mix again and plug in the A input of the left side, and same process, reformat, roto, and the left side where we're going to keep this, we're going to put here. Let me just double check that key because it seems, oh yeah, make sure it's plugged into the grade there. So that might not be the best solution for that key. Let's just see. If I put it here and I mix it over, let's see what we're getting. Also, we're going to need to animate animate these roto shapes as well. So I'm going to keep this one on the center. You know, it might actually be easier to put the center seam key after these two because the center blends these two together. So we have the right side key, the left side key. Right now, though, it's only blending the right and the center, though. I want to blend these two together. So I'm going to actually remove this key mix, and I'm going to put a key mix below here so that we can blend across the two of these. So we're blending across this one and this one using another alpha. So if that doesn't make sense, you'll just watch and you'll see exactly what I mean. So you see, if I have it after, it just helps us blend those two together. So we have that key and this key. And I'll just push this sort of all the way up. And then I'll just go through and animate this so it matches our edge. All right, that's pretty good. And then we'll just continue with this left side key. I don't know if this key is going to be good or not, but we'll see. We might need to adjust it a little bit. Let me just go back and see our actual alpha and see how much we need to have. Yeah, so we have a little bit of that area, so it should be okay. Because I did do a little bit of roto and stuff. So we'll try with this, and if we need to adjust it. So just make sure the left side key stays relatively in the same area. And we're not going to use the rest of all this. We're just going to key mix this part that we're generating. Whoops, let me put that back. Don't know why it's doing that. All right. And again, we have that like motion blur thing over, and we don't want to really use that portion of the key. I mean, there are some aspects of it that are kind of good, but I think the roto would probably be a better solution there, like how we did. So we got right side key, mixing, left side key, and then we do the third key to get that seam to go away. And let me just expand that up a little bit and expand this up a little bit so we don't run into some weird problems. So I'm just giving myself a little bit extra room there, so we don't run into some weird alpha issues there. Just do that and do that. Okay. So now we have that area sort of keyed. Let's try to, well, first we could clean it up a little bit more. So I'm just going to go in there with a roto paint and just put a stencil. Roto paint stencil, and plug in the roto paint to a reformat the same way we did. And we'll just go in there and just sort of, yeah, that'll be fine. We'll just go in there and erase some of the bad stuff that's peeking through on some of the frames. Because there's some darker dirt that is coming through in the key that we don't want. So we can just go in there and erase it real quick. That's probably the quickest way to do it. So you can see this is still faster than rotoscoping because we're not having to try to match this perfect fur that's like blowing around. Like that would be pretty difficult to rotoscope. So doing a key and then just like cleaning it up with a little bit of paint is probably the best solution in this case. We can soften that edge a little bit once we're done as well. So I'm just painting all this out in case we use any of these areas. I'm not worrying about the stuff further away because we'll just use a roto to isolate the area that we want when we key mix this into our main alpha. And see here, I might need to adjust the roto shape from above. So I'm gonna make sure it covers, and then we could just feather it out very slightly. So I'm just kind of using a feather to blur them all together a little bit. So here's a little bit gray. We could do a grade to adjust this if we want, but that's the last thing I'll do. I just want to make this sort of work here. So I'm just erasing using the roto paint here and stenciling that out from our alpha, and then just removing these little dirt. So here we have roto for this, I don't know, little lamp that he's holding, I think we have roto. Yeah, so I already did roto for all that. So I'm not going to spend too much time trying to key that area because we have a roto. It's really more for, if I go back, some of the areas in between that we did in rotoscope. So some of the stuff in here, it's not keying that well. Let me take a look. Maybe we could, so this might be an advanced part where we could, see it's not keying that well. We're still getting a piece of that wall in our key. So what we could do is we could crunch it even more, create another key, and just key mix it into that little part there. Just in this little area. Make sure you do the reformat. And then we'll just blur it a little bit. And then we can blur the actual alpha itself. So if we put a blur on the alpha, just kind of soften the edge. And that might help us just isolate what's, oops, let me just, yeah, so it gets rid of a little bit more of that dirt that's behind. So if I step through, we might not need this the whole shot. We might just need it just a little bit where the lamp is kind of revealing what's behind there. And it's not doing a perfect job. We still see that there's like a piece of dirt or something. So again, we could go to the bottom, go to the roto paint and just kind of erase that. And if there's still like some half of the dirt in the very edge, we could just kind of clone stamp it out. So if I have a, we can't clone stamp because it's not plugged in right, but if I put a roto paint here, we could do a clone stamp because that's opacity 0.1, and then just do our traditional clone stamping to try to get rid of it. And that should be good, and then we'll continue. All right, well, let's just see where that gets us. We might have to clean this up a bit more, but I'm gonna just do a tiny bit more, and then we'll see where it gets us. All right. Okay, I'm gonna do key mix now and put this, again, we'll expand this down, the script, so we can keep pushing the whole script down, and then we'll expand our little backdrop. And we'll key mix that in between the garbage. So here's our garbage mat and our holdouts. So we'll put an alpha for the mask, and we'll put a roto reformat into that. And just, so here's our alpha after the garbage. Let me just load the whole thing so you can see it. This is our alpha before the garbage mat. This is after. So before the holdouts, we need to add that piece of alpha that we just did. So if I key mix it in, we get that. So we're starting to bring that in. I'm not going to bring too much of the lamp in because that's part of our roto that we already did. So we're getting that little piece, and then we're adding the roto on top, like that. So we can use the key that's behind to try to get a lot of the area. And it's doing a pretty good job for this area, so we'll just keep going through. I just need to animate this roto shape. And I don't want to get too much of the gray stuff if I can help it. So again, we don't want to keep the roto way over here because we get the pieces of dirt. So we'll just kind of keep it relatively in the right spot. Another thing is we don't want to push it too far over because then we start to replace all the area that we had a good key from earlier. So if you look before this new add-on that we're doing, if I look up here, we already keyed this area pretty well. We're just trying to get this area where everything crosses the seam. So seams are really some of the most difficult things to deal with because you're trying to always blend keys that don't necessarily want to be blended. So let's just keep doing this. See, I'm not going to use the key down here because it's filled full of dirt. So that's what we did the roto for. But it's still saving us a lot of time to do it this way because, for example, I didn't have to rotoscope all of that area. And that's why it's good to pre-plan your shot and think about it in the way that we did. Because if you spend a lot of time rotoscoping stuff that you don't need to, you're going to add unnecessary time to what you're doing. So the tricky part's going to be when this rope comes in, it's probably going to catch a little bit in this key here, and we're going to have to sort of try to remove it. But you see this bringing back the area quite well. We have some holes, but that's fine. We'll fix those. Gonna move our roto shape to the edge so we only use the hold out there, and then try not to get any of the extra dirt. Disable and enable. Maybe we need to use a little bit more of this area down there. We could use a little bit more. So we could bring some of it back. It's okay to animate these shapes as well. You know, you can key mix it in, key mix it off when it works and when it doesn't. So here it seems to be working. So here's where it starts to get a little bit trickier because it's starting to capture some of this band that's coming over. Although it doesn't seem like it's doing anything too bad at this part. So we are getting a little bit of dirt in this part. So maybe we'll have to like paint that out or something. But you see, like if I look at this alpha, we're getting a lot of that band that's coming through. So you got to be careful that we don't make it too solid. If you look at let's just take a look at the pre-multiplied image just to double check, see what we're doing. It's pretty solid actually, so I think it actually looks pretty good on that specific frame. So we'll continue. And disable and enable. This seems to be bringing in some problems now on this particular frame, so I'm not sure. Let's see what's happening. So it's keying a hole through there. So we might not want to key mix that piece, or we'll just have to do a roto to fill that area. Let's just double check. It's kind of hard to tell. Let's look at our footage just to see. So this should be pretty much solid. So we might just add to our holdout mat. So if you see there's a little bit of holes and stuff, like here, it might just be easier to like add another little mat here, and then just kind of for this frame we could just sort of add this filler shape, and then look at our footage. and maybe brighten it a little bit so you can see what we're doing. So that should all be solid, we know. So we can just add that extra filler shape there. And then I'll just make sure that it doesn't go off. And it might only need to be like there for like a frame. Not sure if it has to be there the whole time. So I think that's good. I'm not going to go all the way to the edge with this. We can actually fix a lot of that area without, you can see it's not pure white, so it's a little bit see-through, but we can fix that with some grading later. But just for the frames that we start to get holes, I just want to add that shape like this frame, frame 41. For whatever reason, we're getting holes in that key. So I'm just filling it in with a shape here. And then we can go to the start frame, frame 38. Just go to our original footage here. You can see I'm flipping around quite a lot, but it just helps to get a sense of what we're doing. So we need to get our key mix there from the thing that we just did. So let's go back and try to bring in some of that area. So you see we get all that detail back through this Luma key. And it's doing a pretty good job over the seam. It's not perfect, but we can getting a pretty close result from keying it without having to rotoscope everything, which is always what you're looking for. So let's pre-multiply and take a look. So we can see before, after. So we just brought all the area back. Some areas are a little bit semi-transparent, but we're gonna do a core matte once we've completely finished this key. And the reason we're not doing the core matte yet is because it's not like we can do like the Primatte method where we just select it and we shrink it in, because we have so many different keyers going on. So it's better to just get an overall key of like the edges and everything, and then we can like sharpen this key and shrink it in at the very end. But we need to have like a working shape of the person before we can like generate a good core matte. So I'm gonna let this play, and we can, so like on this frame, I'm just double checking to make sure we don't have stuff like this where we have like a really sharp edge and then, you know, that doesn't make any sense. That should be basically solid on this frame. So some of our holdouts, we need to, you know, paint just some solidity back. So we could also do that as well. We could do a roto paint, plug it in to our holdout layer, and then just take a solid brush like right here, and we can just literally, like if there's some spots like this, we could just paint them in the alpha. So it's already set to RGBA. And when we're copying, again, we're not looking at this picture here. This is not representative of anything. We're only looking at the alpha in this stream. So hopefully that makes sense by now. And then we're copying that back into our picture and pre-multiplying. So we can, yeah, so maybe an easy way to do this would be looking at the picture and hitting M. So we could sort of see this laid over. And then I'm just going to paint, if there's any holes that are obvious, I'm just adding it to that paint stroke. So you can see it's starting to get a little bit heavy, the script, because we're doing a lot of stuff. See, there's some areas like this that I'd like to keep in there. So if I put the opacity really low, I can just like try to add that with some paint strokes or roto. So let me just go to my yeah, let me just add this. So if we just look at the alpha, I can just sort of paint in. Might be easier with a roto in this case. Kind of difficult to see. This would probably be the point that you might want to start like pre-comping stuff, because it is getting a little bit heavy because it's processing all of these nodes. So if you have a slower computer, or your script starts getting big like this, it's probably the point where you want to start thinking about pre-comping stuff. So let's just go back to our alpha. Again, you see in the color image, it looks super weird if we're in the stream, but I'm only looking at the alpha. And then we have these kind of blurry stuff going on here. And I have these two rotopaints. Now I'm just going to take all of that and kind of blur it together. So if I click on this rotopaint again and go to the blur, I can just kind of make all this meld together by using a little bit of a blur. So I'm just kind of painting a blur there and sort of blend this all so we don't have like these weird lines going through. So something like that. And you could actually paint in motion blur in here as well. So some people like to actually use like a motion blur node, and you can try to like do a directional type of blur. This is sort of a just a general blur, but if you want to be really picky about it, you could even paint. You could use a dir blur, and you could blur in a certain direction so you don't get softening in both directions. But we're not going to go that picky on this. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. We got our shoulder restored. There's a couple of little holes, but we're going to fix them. I'm going to end this video, and then we'll review where we're at again, and then we'll kind of tackle some different areas.